Hello ladies and gents, another video brought to you by AntsRus. I don't know about you guys, but I can't believe it. My channel is 1 year old today. Personally, I think it's fitting if I do a reenactment of my first video, which is my ant cave tour, but this time, part 2. One of the biggest differences is I've got a Patreon page now. Now what this is so you guys can directly help me support my channel by signing up for these different tiers. You get different benefits and cool things like that. So check it out. I've got 2 Patrons at the moment. Their names are here. These guys help me out. Thank you very much. If you want to support me, I'll put a link down below in the description. And wow, not only am I 1 year old today, I've also got over 500 subs. Now this is in no small part to Antics, because they included me in a recent competition where to win some Messor Monor Hesperius, I think it was, you needed to subscribe to my channel, and that gave me a boost of an extra 30 people, which is great. Now I hope you guys stick around, because my content, well, I don't think it's too bad, and I hope you don't think it's too bad either, and you stick around and stay subbed. But only time will tell. Please don't leave me. Now let's start this, how my first ant cave video started, with my Camponotus nicobarensis on my Nicos. Now those of you that are new to my channel might not necessarily know my story about my Nicos, but boy, has it been a roller coaster over the past year. I mean, the playlist is up in the top right corner now. Check it out for these girls, because it has been literally highs of up to 33,000 workers, and then lows right down to what I'm at now, which is about 1,500. I reckon I lost around 2/3 of my colony easily, but there is light at the end of the tunnel now. So those of you that have followed the channel know full well that I have gone a very long period without any decent brood development. Yes, I've had lots of larvae, but none have developed into pupae. But if you look at this video now, I have got lots of pupae again. Yes, this lull of not having any new workers replace the dead and dying seems to be on its way out now. I've got loads of pupae compared to what it's been like. Now, if you go back to my other videos, you'll see that it used to be filled to the gills with pupae and larvae and stuff like that. But I'm on the return now, I think. I think we're on the return with these girls, where they're getting back to full form and they're starting to pick up their production. There is loads of pupae. I mean, the bottom part of the nest is quite extensive, and you've just seen some fresh eggs there. You've got some larvae, and if we go towards the end of this video, you'll see some more, that there is quite a fair few larvae and a nice little batch of eggs as well. Now this is a 2-queen colony still. Even though I keep losing 1 queen, she suddenly miraculously rocks up at some other point, so she is about. But yeah. And we're just about to move on to the area of all the larvae. There you go. There's some nice little big pile of larvae there, and there is some fresh eggs. So fingers crossed, guys. Keep those fingers crossed. Now, totally following on from my last ant cave video, I'm going to go on to my Camponotus Hesperius. Now these are probably one of the least featured ants on my channel, even though they've been one of the oldest ants that I've got on my channel. And the reason for that is they are very slow growing, and there isn't a lot of action to worth filming for them. And this is their current setup. I've got an Antboy Elite Outworld, which is good for larger species, and I've got my own design Camponotus nest attached to it as well. They are housed in my 3D printed nest. There is videos about my development of this nest and things like that. I even did an honest review where I destroyed it to the point of where I thought, actually, it's not as good as where I thought it was, and let's start again. What's interesting here, going back about my 3D printed nest, it seems that my queen's chamber, this one here, seems to have done the trick, and that's where they live when they're in an oversized nest, which was the intention of it. But anyway, I've always struggled with these. Their production is very slow, they're very temperamental, but since putting them in this nest and leaving them to it, they have actually started to grow in numbers. And you can see here they've got a healthy little pile of brood there, which is great. Their numbers are slowly increasing, but like I said, with the Hesperius, their reproduction seems to be very slow. Either that, or I've just got a really lazy queen who doesn't like to lay. But either way, I've got everything set up for the conditions to be perfectly right for them. They've got a nice little queen's chamber here for them to do it, and it seems to be working. These are my Lagus nigers. Now, last year I featured these quite a lot on my channel, but when post-hibernation this year, they've not been on at all. And in fact, this is the first time this season I've shown these ants. So there's a bit of an update from them too. Now, if you guys remember my first video about this Chinese nest, I said I hated it and I couldn't wait to get them out of it. Well, I've done a U-turn. Once you sort out the imperfections in it, it's actually a really good nest for nigers anyway. Yes, I had to ram some cotton wool down the gaps because they were getting out. Yes, I had to put a red filter on it because they had nothing. Yes, I had to light block by putting some black insulation tape around the outside to stop light getting in so they can be settled. But after that's all sorted, oh yes, and don't forget about the cotton wool in that really ridiculous hydration system, which you fill full of water, tip it upside down and it all spills out. So you have to put cotton wool in there to stop it spilling out. But once you get over that, it's actually a really good nest. And what I also like about this nest is it's got expansion ports, so you can attach new outworlds and new nests to it, like I have here, my AliExpress outworld here, that I actually really rate. Super cheap, but really, really good for small species. Now this is how industrious they are. I put a tiniest little bit of medium in their nest, and they've built this out of it. Now it is practically hollow. I don't know how they support it, because I never looked inside it obviously, but it's pretty impressive. And actually one of the features that I like about this nest is that, and if you look inside the nest here with a macro lens, you can see that there's brood all over the place. I don't know how big this colony is, to be fair. I would probably guesstimate and say pushing the 500, maybe more. In fact, probably loads more, I don't know. But you can see they've got tons and tons of brood, they've got tons of pupae, tons of larvae. So they're doing really, really well in this nest. And still, there is bags of space for them to expand into if they need to. Oh, there's a queen. There is bags of space for them to expand into if they really want to as well. Not only that, though, I've got a new outworld, because you can see with that little structure that was in the outworld attached to this nest, it was difficult to feed them, so to put my feeders in, so attach another outworld to it. So it's got longevity, this nest, to be honest. I reckon they're going to be good for another year at least in here. Now these guys did survive hibernation, obviously, because they're in my video, but some didn't, so it's really good that they're doing well. I'm really pleased. Now this is my other Niger colony. As you can see, they're still in the test tube, because Nigers being Nigers will not move for love nor money. They've been attached to this outworld, this nest, new nest set up with an outworld, for a good couple of months, and in fact this is the start of the season actually, and they still haven't moved. So I'm leaving them to it. I'm not forcing them to move, I'm just letting them crack on as they want, as it were. But if you look into the test tube here, you'll see I've got plenty of brood there. They're doing really well again, but the water's yellow, and this is why I wanted to move them, but they won't move. Now believe it or not, I can't get any decent macro pictures of these because the test tube's too big, so I can't really see what I want to see, but never mind. But you can see they are doing well. They've got a good pile of brood. They do use the outworld quite readily, and they do explore this nest area, but they won't move into it. Obviously the conditions aren't optimal for it yet. I just want them to move, please. Now this is my third one that's still in a proper setup, as it were, and as you can see I'm trying to get them to move into the nest on the right from the nest on the left, because I've exposed it to light. Yes, it's really cool. It's the Ant Canada Tower. You can see them digging, which is cool, but I tell you, it's a gimmick. I didn't really pay much attention to them while they're in there. Unfortunately, there's the queen as well. She's now moved into the test tube. This test tube was originally their water test tube. They filled it full of brood. They drank all the water, moved in, couldn't move them out, and it's exposed to light, so these colony are going to be forever difficult to move. You're probably asking the question, why will they be difficult to move? Because they are accustomed to the light. They have been using that test tube since they came out of hibernation, and they've put all their brood in it in all different stages, so they're accustomed to the light. Hence, when I've taken off the cover off this ant tower here, the red filter that is, they haven't moved. So I don't think these guys are going to move at all. I think they're going to stay in this setup, and all I've got to hope to do is expand it as they need. Now you're probably asking, why have I got like knitting stuff in the background and books as if I could read? Come on. Well, this is in my wife's lady cave. She says that I can't use it to store ants, and I blagged her and said, it's okay, it's only one I'm feeding, but they're staying there. Don't tell her. I've put the little outworld as an AliExpress one to make it easy for me to feed and stuff like that. And the liquid feeders there, these are my ones. Now you can buy them if you want, they're like £13.15, including postage, for 6 with trays and bottles. And they're really good for small species because it helps prevent them getting into the bottles, which is always a pain in the bum. Now here's an honourable mention for the most hardcore queen going, and I mean hardcore. Like literally, she was housed in this outworld and prepped for hibernation, the same as all my other ants were. But unfortunately, all of her workers died, absolutely every last one of them. And literally, she was a couple of hundred strong colony as well. There must have been about 400 or 500, I reckon. And when I was taking apart the nest to clean it out so I can use it again potentially, I noticed that the queen was still alive, surrounded by dead workers. So I put her in a test tube, and wow. Normally when the queen loses all the workers, she simply gives up, but not this queen. Not only did she produce the eggs after not getting fed since before last year, and grew the eggs to full term to develop workers, she's now laid even more. This queen is a monster. I mean seriously, whole of hibernation, no food. I put her in a test tube to make sure she's okay, to give her the chance just in case. She produces eggs, she grows 3 workers. Wow, just wow. This woman's a legend. Now if we move on to Polyrhacus dives, I'd like to say this is a good news story, but unfortunately it's not. I have not seen any males. These have been prolific male producers since the day I got them. I've not seen any for a long time, and now I find it very hard and far between to find workers cutting around the terrarium that I built for them. I've not seen many. I used to be full of polyrackers cutting around this outworld, but now I see very little, to be honest. Maybe a couple of workers here and there, such as these by the feeding station. I still feed them regularly. There's plenty of protein in there, even if the woodlice do steal it all, which they tend to do anyway, so for them to get. So they should still be doing fine, but they're not. Now, they did weave some moss all the way up the front of this log, but you can see that it has not been repaired recently. In fact, it's fallen away and exposing where the nest area used to be. Now, my only conclusion here is that they've not got the young to weave the nest again, which means if they've not got young, they've not got queens. So I'm very much of the mindset that the queens are dead, and I'm literally just seeing the remaining workers cutting around before they disappear. But not to fear, I do plan to put more polyrackers in here again once they start coming on the market again. Well, that's it for today. No, I'm lying, it's not really it. I've still got loads to talk about. Let's crack on. Now, that was everything I had a year ago. Now let's move on to what I've got now. Now, these ants don't need much introduction onto my channel because I've done loads of videos on them in a short period of time I've had them. Well, for daily noders. No-duh. Not nodus. No-duh. Yeah, I'm looking at you. Stupid idiot. Now, mate, I'm like a dog and bone. You need to stop replying to me because, especially if I'm drunk, mate, I will just troll you a little bit. And I just started to troll you a little bit. Now, I'm sorry, mate. Don't take it personally. But it was funny. No doubt. Now, jokes aside, as you can see from this outworld, they're pretty busy in there. Probably need to look at extending an outworld again because it's just too busy in there. They're not using this one, but I want to take this out because it's pants for filming in. But anyway, just because it's curved. Not that there's an issue with the outworld at all. But if you look in the nest, you can see they're doing really well. This is the Wakushi MS nest, 5.5 I think it is. But the brood pile has dropped a little bit. Now I think this has dropped because I've been away for a week and haven't had that constant intake of protein because my house sitter didn't feed my ants, obviously. But I'll put a playlist in the top right corner now, so you can check out these from start when I first got them to now where they're a couple of thousand strong. Now these are fast becoming one of my favourites. It's my Carapace solsinodis Asian raider ants, because I can't say the Latin word for love nor money. I'm not going to talk too much about these ladies because literally a couple of weeks ago I did a video on them, and they are very interesting. But what is very noticeable is the very little activity. But as soon as you put something like a roach out there, then boom, they all come out to play. I put a video on Instagram of them having this similar sized cockroach and they've absolutely destroyed it. Now check out this picture here from inside the nest and you can see that that is all that's remained of the roach. They absolutely annihilated it. Yes, I know the nest is too big for them. Yes, I've got my reasons, which I explained in my video, so I'm not going to go into too much detail now. But if you look here, you can see that they've got eggs and the egg pile is slowly growing as well. So clearly they're happy in that nest. So shove off if you say it's too big. I'm not listening. Moving on to my Formica sanguinis. These are my slave maker ants. These guys are really interesting. They keep slaves. Recently done a video on them, so go check out my playlists for that. But moving on, you'll see here that they're doing really well. There's about 30, 40-ish workers. I don't actually sat down and counted them, but they're doing good. They're in... There's the queen actually. She actually settled down because she was really skitty. You can see they're really well fed. Now I tried to get in at the back of the test tube there to try and get some decent footage, see if there's any eggs there and stuff like that. Because since last batch hatched, she hasn't laid any more that I'm aware of. But it doesn't mean they're not down there where I can't see them. You pushing me to get the camera. There you go. This is the best I can do. Now they are processing dead, as you can see there. There's some dead roach in the mouths there. So they're obviously taking the protein. So hopefully it means they're going to get even more eggs from these guys. Now I have tried to move them into the Wakushi S3 nest, I think it was, but they haven't fully moved yet. But I'm not forcing the move, I'm just letting them do it at their own time. If you see here, I've put some pine needles in their outward for them to make it a bit more naturalistic, and you can also see these shiny things here. Now what they are is that's pine resin. Now the reason I've got that is because during my research for my other Formica species, I've noticed that, well, I didn't notice, I read that they've been found with kilos of this stuff in the nest, and it's hypothesised that they spray the formic acid on it and it makes a natural anaesthetic for them, so if they get fungus infections or any bacterial infections, they can rub themselves against it and alleviate themselves of that. So I've decided to add it to all of my Formicas, starting with these. Oh, disclaimer, I also discussed this with AntsRus as well, so it's something we both discussed. On the topic of Formicas, we'll move on to my Formica fuscas. Now, I've had this colony since last year and had a really great footage of the queen taking the workers out of the pupae, which was awesome. Check that on Instagram. Now, I do love the fuscas. I've not really featured them on my channel for their own dedicated video because they're not really big enough and not a lot going on. But you can clearly see they're beautiful ants. They are gorgeous. A nice little black with banding on the back. As you can see here, they've got a healthy pile of brood. Yes, I am going to harvest this brood at some point in the near future to offer to my slave makers, but they're too small and it would be too detrimental to take it now. Once they get big enough and I've actually developed the nest for them, I am going to start harvesting them for my slave makers. But if you look here, I've got a second test tube attached to it because the first one's run out of water, and very much in my ethos, I'm not forcing moves, as in the arts that I've covered, keep both test tubes covered. When the conditions aren't right and the old one, they'll move to the new one, hopefully. Now this next colony of mine is doing very well, but I'm going to butcher the name. So I've got a host Tetromorium caspitum and a social parasite, I can do this, Strongylorthus testaceus. Right, yeah, I probably butchered that, but I tried my best. That's all you want. Anyway, so what they're in currently is still the test tube setup, and they're attached to a Kushi S1 outworld, which for small species, this is bang on because there's no way of them getting out. Now, as you can see, the test tube's turning yellow while the water is, and it's running low, so I need to look about moving them soon. But the only down point about this is the outworld's only got one port, which means it's going to be a pain to move them off. I have to reconnect a junction box, which means they're going to dump their rubbish in there like every ant that ever existed does with those junction boxes. They're just trash heaps that you can't get out and clean. Personally, I try and avoid them, but sometimes you need them. Now, what you'll see with these is they've got an awesome brood pile, which is always good to see in any ant colony. But if you look in the bottom left corner now, you'll see that the larger queen cutting around, that's the Tetromorium queen. And the testaceus queen, you will see shortly, and I'll put an arrow to her, is much smaller. But unlike most parasitic queens, she doesn't actually kill the host queen to take over. What she does is she subdues the host queen with chemicals to stop her producing reproductives, but still lets her produce workers to look after her and her brood. So it's a really, oh, there she is, there's the testaceus queen there. Literally blinking, you'll miss her. But back to what I was saying, it's a really unique kind of parasitic queen where, like I said, she doesn't kill them like they normally do. She actually cohabitates with this queen, so it's really interesting. I can't wait for them to take off. Now, moving on to my Messor Barbarus. Now, I've never really bothered with these species, even though they're quite common, but I'm kind of regretting that because I do love them. They are the messiest ants in the history of the world. They leave feces everywhere and they're really messy with the husks. But by God, look at these. I've had these since the start of the season when there was only one queen, and already this season they've exploded in numbers. And what's interesting to see is the contrast between this Messor Barbarus and another Messor Barbarus. This one took protein in the arts of insects all the time. The other one hit and miss, and the growth difference is quite noticeably, as you can see here. Now, as you can see, their growth is very much slower. They are mainly dependent on the seeds and stuff, and they don't really take a lot of protein. I did offer them a roach, which are just finishing off there, but generally speaking they don't, and they can tell the difference in growth big time. You could argue that it's not really a fair test because they've got different setups. One's in a test tube and an outworld, this is in the Venus nest. Yeah, I've already talked about the Venus nest. But jokes aside about the Venus nest, yeah, I think it's more the fact of the different type of protein they're taking on rather than the setup itself. Now, moving on to my Messor Arenaris, if you can see, they are attached to the Wakushi Venus nest again, but there's also a test tube there because she's run out of water, but she's happy where she is, and I'm not forcing no move. So she'll move when she wants, as I'm in no rush for her to move. She'll move when she's ready. This is the Wakushi nest with the blacked out cover on, and they are using the test tube as a bit of storage, but that's about it really. They're in the old test tube with no water, but hey ho. If you look at the workers, I've got a fair amount of workers with some majors and minors, but look at the size of that larvae there. I'm fingers crossed it's going to be a super major, because the super major is just as big as the queen almost. But yeah, I've got different broods, different stages, and I've got some eggs, so it's all looking good. But this is what I really wanted to do. At the top, I've got my Arenaris queen with her workers, and then I've got the bottom, I've got my Messor Barbarus. Couldn't even figure what they're called then. Now, I have slowed this footage down so you can actually get to appreciate the size difference, but the queen is probably a third bigger than what the Barbarus queen is, and the workers are probably on the same scale. Yes, I don't have a lot more workers in the Arenaris, but hopefully they will grow quite big. I think they grow to a couple of hundred in colony size, so I'm looking forward to that. But look at the size difference, they're just huge. Can't wait for super majors for the Arenaris, can't wait. Probably the prettiest messers you will ever find are the Messor Monor Hesperius. Now, I won this in a competition from AntsRus, and I'll put a link to their website down below. Now, this is what I mean by being pretty. Look at the colours for the workers. Now, unfortunately, they don't do majors, for my knowledge. They'll only have like normal workers like this, but they're still really pretty. She's got a healthy pile of brood, and I've got a decent amount of workers. So she's doing really well, to be honest. very skitty, so I haven't got a lot of footage of her, but I do have a video of her that I did a little while ago, so check out that to get more details about this species. Well, that's it for the new ant cave tour. There is a couple of species I've not talked about, but that will come out in the wash going forward. But thanks for supporting my channel, guys. Check out my Patreon page if you want to support me. That would be awesome-o. And thank you for those people that are currently supporting me. Now, this video was to make up for last week's missing it because I was on holiday for my birthday, and it's my channel's birthday this weekend, so you got a 20-minute special. So hope you enjoyed it, guys, and I do look forward to seeing my next video. So bye-bye for now.